Hello, and welcome to a very special edition of ACF Chefs Forum. We are so excited to see you in New Orleans for ACF National Convention next week, and so we wanted to kick off the education and networking in advance of all of us traveling to the Big Easy. We appreciate you tuning in today for this webinar and hope you're ready to learn as we shine the light on a very delicious topic of chocolate. Before we begin, as a note, we want to hear from you. So please use the chat function to collaborate with other chefs and students tuning in, and the Q&A function to pose questions to today's featured chef. So let's get the conversation going in the chat. If you haven't already, please let us know where you're tuning in from today. I'm Jackie Pressinger, American Culinary Federation's Director of Strategic Partnerships, and I am so honored to introduce a wonderful pastry chef. She is highly decorated, award-winning pastry chef Susan Notter, certified executive pastry chef who is the owner and chef at Elizabeth Moore Chocolates. She's such an accomplished professional, chef, educator, and competitor, and I could list her accolades for hours. But I know Chef Notter is excited to start her presentation, so at this time, I will pass the presentation over to today's guest chef. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chef Notter.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here. I wish it was in person. So those of you who do come to the convention, I will see you there. But for the rest of you, I hope you'll find this presentation today educational and informative. I am at my store. Sorry, the phone is ringing. So we really are here live in Pelham, Alabama. It's a little bit south of Birmingham. I opened Elizabeth Moore Chocolates just over a year ago, and we make fine Swiss chocolates. So we're going to be making some ganache today, and we'll talk about traditional methods of making ganache, but I want to show you something a little different. And what we're going to end up with as one of the products is something like this. And this is a selection of our single origin truffles. So here I have an 88% Venezuela. I have a 68% from Madagascar, and I have a 45% milk from Bolivia here. So this is kind of one of the products that we are going to be ending up with today. And for those of you who are coming to the convention, I will be there with the culinary team, with ACF team. We will have a table at the icebreaker, and I will be bringing some of the truffles with me. So you'll get a chance to sample them as well. So when we make a ganache kind of like a mayonnaise, right? This is emulsification. We want the ingredients all to blend together. So we've got this beautiful stable mass that is shiny, smooth, doesn't break, has great flavor, texture, and mouthfeel. A lot of times when we're doing traditional ganaches with just our cream, our butter, maybe invert sugar or glucose and chocolate, our shelf life is pretty limited. I would say maximum about 3 weeks, just because of the level of water activity within the product and the freshness of the product. The recipe, and I did attach a PowerPoint, so hopefully that you all have that. With the recipe I'm using today, we can actually extend that shelf life to 12 to 15 weeks, just by nature of the ingredients that we have in it, and still end up with a really, really nice flavor profile, a fresh product that tastes really good, but maintains that nice texture, mouthfeel for that length of time as well. So what we want to do today is discuss how do I increase the shelf life, how do I maintain the flavor within my product, and how do I keep a good texture. So of course, our shelf life, we're going to talk with a recipe about sugars and about dry matter. Maintain the flavor, use good quality ingredients. As you know, before I opened the store, probably most of you know, I work for Veltlin Switzerland, and so I got to know their product line very, very well. And we really just use the Swiss chocolate from Veltlin here at the store. So buying a good quality ingredient is paramount, where you have a great flavor profile just within the chocolate. So, you know, I'm a purist. We do have a lot of bonbons and different flavors, and our bonbons include caramels, fruit-based items, nuts. But with my single origin chocolate bars, I like to just keep the origin pure. So, you know, I don't add other things to it. I think with this line of truffles as well, it's nice to really emphasize that quality of that chocolate and that individual flavor profile of that chocolate or couverture that we're using as well. So good quality ingredients. And then texture. So I'm going to show you a method today, actually in the Robocoup. So we've got those 3 elements. shelf life, flavor, and texture. So one thing that influences our shelf life is the water activity. So anything that has a high liquid content has a very short shelf life because it's liable to mold and gets bacteria and things like that. So water has a AW, active water content, of 1. Something like a table is a 0. So if we can end up somewhere in between the two, we're going to increase our shelf life. And that is by adding different sugars that actually bind that and controls that water activity within our product. So in my recipe, I have dextrose, I have glucose, and I have sorbitol. The powders, let's go off camera for a second, they all look very similar. They're all white and they're all very, very fine. Dextrose is a little bit effervescent. So if you just taste the dextrose by itself, it's got a slight bubbly effect to it. But the sweetening power of all of these is about half the amount of sugar. So even though we're bulking up on our dry matter that are dry sugars, different types of sugars between the glucose powder, the sorbitol, and the dextrose, we're not actually adding extra sweetness to our product. So it's not going to be tasting overly sweet. We do get these, we label them, keep them nice and sealed because they do attract moisture, which is a property that we want in the ganache, but we don't want them to get rock hard. So make sure you seal up your containers really, really well. So active water, super important. The more we can reduce it, the longer our shelf life is going to be. So a lot of times when you're buying commercially made chocolate items, let's say like Lindor, for example, if you eat that filling and you eat a fresh ganache filling, you're definitely going to know there's a big difference. And a lot of that is because it's very much fat-based. So if it's fat-based, there's very, very little water content in it. And so using a product that's fat-based is going to keep your product fresh for a longer period. But in a ganache, we want freshness to it and that beautiful mouthfeel and flavor. So we're not going to go the route of adding all different fats. Of course, there's butter in it and cream, and those are good fats. So the different sugars, what they do is we have our liquids, and then we have, so our liquids would be our cream, our butter when it melts, and also, our chocolate has the non-fat solids, and then it also has the cocoa butter in it too. So when we're looking at sorbitol, like I said, the sweetness power is about 50% of regular sugar. So it's not going to taste very sweet. And what this does, it retains the moisture within the product and it controls the water activity of the product as well. So it's an antioxidant, which means that it will maintain flavors. Flavors don't oxidize away from it. And it also prevents crystallization as well. So we're not getting something that's drying out and crystallizing. The glucose powder, also a sweetness value here is between 35 to 65% of regular sugar. So again, very, very low sweetness power. This also has anti-crystallizing properties. It binds and it also changes the viscosity of your product. So you're going to get a smoother, kind of creamier product using this. Will also influence the water activity within your product. In Europe, when you buy glucose, it actually will tell you what the DE is, the dextrose equivalent. So the lower the DE, the firmer the product is and the less water it has in it. So for example, if I'm boiling sugar for pulling and blowing and I want that sugar to stay nice and dry and not get sticky, I am going to choose a glucose that has a very low DE or dextrose equivalent. If I want something that's say like a pâte à fruits, a fruit jelly, maybe a caramel, something that can be a little tackier and stickier, then I can choose a glucose that has a higher DE, dextrose equivalent. The ones we get in this country are typically the higher ones, but if you've ever worked in Europe in a confectionery, you've probably seen different ones. When I trained in England, I went to Germany, and I remember picking up a pail of glucose and trying to pour it, and everybody just laughing at me because the only glucose I've been used to using in Europe, in England, was a very liquidy one. And then where I was working in Germany, it was like so firm that you just had to wet your hands, go dig it out. There was no way that you could afford it. So I quickly realized why they were laughing at me. But now I know why that is, because it was a glucose that had a low DE, and the DE means dextrose equivalent. And then the other sugar is dextrose, again, about 50% sweetness power to sucrose. It also is hygroscopic, which means it keeps the moisture, and it has a freshness of, like, the feel is very fresh in the mouth as well. Also influences the texture and the stops crystallization. Dextrose is actually one molecule of glucose. So that's individual molecules of glucose. Sugars are a whole topic for themselves. You can really get deeply into that. But what we need to know for our demo right now is that we are going to increase our shelf life. We're going to have a great tasting product. And I'm going to show you how to do it. So we're actually going to use the food processor. So right in my pot here, I have my cream, my sugars. So what I did is I dissolved my cream with my butter first, make sure it was all melted. And then I added my sugars into it and whisked them in and then brought it to a boil. This has now been allowed to cool to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I'm going to do is actually pour it into here. So it's going to make it easier to put into the food processor. And then I have my cubature. So here I have 65% cubature from Venezuela, which has a really nice, has a lot of red fruit notes, a lot of little bit of almost cinnamon at the end of it. Really, really nice flavor profile. And it also has some cocoa butter in here too. So what I'm going to do first of all, this is at 104. So this is at 104 and my liquid is at 93. So I'm going to put this in my food processor here. Get that all in there. Make sure you scrape the balls out. The product I use is expensive, but say quality has a price, so I'm okay with that. And then what I'm going to do now is close this up, and I'm going to turn it on low. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually add about 50% of the liquid. And I'm going to mix it until the ganache breaks. It'll be grainy, it'll be separated, and then I'm going to go back and re-emulsify it with the rest of the liquid. So it's going to be a little bit loud from there. I think you can hear it changing. If I turn it up to the camera, this is now what it looks like. So if you're making a regular ganache, I'm doing this on purpose right now, but if you do make a regular ganache, regular methods, and your ganache is grainy, chances are your moisture balance isn't correct. And you just need simply to warm up some milk. I wouldn't necessarily use cream because of fat, and then just blend it back in there until it re-emulsifies. But right now I'm doing this on purpose. You can see it breaks and it gradually begins to kind of clump together. So once I have it at this point, now I'm going to add the rest of the liquid back in, and it will bring it back together again. So I'm rebuilding the ganache one more time. scrape down. So you see how smooth that is right now. See the difference? And that's just now because I've added the rest of the liquid to it. So now I'm just going to kind of scrape this together. And I'm going to give it one more mix through. So with this ganache, I can do a slab ganache. I can do a pipe truffle as well. So I'm going to show you both. So all I need you to do is get it back so it's nicely emulsified. And now you can see the texture. The ganache. Okay, so it's really nice and really, really smooth. So what I'm going to do with this one is I am going to pour it into this frame that I prepared. So this would be for later to create my slab ganache. Right now, it would be a little bit soft for piping. What I'm going to do now is just spread this out. Going to extend my dividers a little bit. Once you've got, since I've used just part of the recipe, and just for the demo, I want to use the ganache in slightly different ways. But once you kind of figure out, you know, how much for the frame, then you can do a complete frame at one time. So now I'm just going to draw this. And then what I would do with this is let it sit overnight so it can recrystallize. And then I will coat one side with chocolate, then just flip it over and use the guitar cutter to cut pieces. The frames actually I get, they're from Feltwin, Switzerland, but AUI does carry them, AUI Fine Foods. So they're nice if you're making, we use these for making patifraie, frames, anything really you're going to pour and actually make plates cut with the guitar cutter. Then you have really nice, even product that you can cut precisely and then, you know, dip adequate in chocolate as well. So this would be good to be able to cut and do a dip bonbon. But like I said, what I would do now is I'm going to let this set overnight, come back the next day, trim it, do a very, very thin layer of chocolate, and then flip it over. The layer of chocolate should be very thin because when you flip it over, when you're dipping, you just need a smooth surface. If you're just to dip the ganache on your dipping fork, the ganache would stick, wouldn't slide off. But you don't want to put too much chocolate because the chocolate's going to set firmer than the ganache. And if you have a thick layer of chocolate and you come to cut it, it's going to crack away from the ganache. What I actually do is take chocolate about 90 degrees, but that's not tempered, and then just spread it super, super thin, flip it over and then cut it. If it's not tempered, it has a slightly softer structure and it's not as hard as if it's tempered. And that way you can cut through it very, very easily. as well. So does that make sense? Just a super thin layer, flip it over, cut it on the guitar cutter, spread it out, let it dry a little bit, a couple of hours, and then you can go ahead and dip those pieces. So this would be for your slab ganache. Now, if we're piping, so if I'm going to, now for piping, I actually prepared these little discs right here. So if we are piping, ideally my ganache needs to be a little cooler. What I'm going to do is just put this back on here again. Because obviously if I'm piping, I want it to hold its shape a little better. So I need to let it, I'll let it sit a little bit and then come back and pipe it. You could also use like a flexi mold. If you have a small one, silicone. Where did I put the top? Oh, yeah, sorry. So if you have a small flexi mold, you can actually pipe it into the flexi mold, let it set completely and pop those pieces out. And that way everything is completely uniform as well. So that would be another way of doing it. Just see what the consistency is like. So it's a little soft still. So what I'm going to do is I am going to table this down so it actually cools down a little bit. This is something also you can do with your regular ganaches. I just need to get a scraper, 1 second. So if you're making even your regular ganaches and you don't have time to wait and you need the product quickly, you can actually just empty it onto granite or marble. I have quartz here. But you just basically need a cold stone. And then it's almost like tempering chocolate in that you're cooling it down basically and bringing it back together again. Now I did prep a few of these earlier, so that way they had time to set up a little bit before I dip them and then put them into cocoa powder. So we've got a couple of different ways of finishing. So I can, just in the cocoa powder, so they look very kind of organic looking and very natural. Another way would be to dip the whole thing in chocolate. So I'm going to show you that one as well. And you can almost make something that we call a palais d'or. So we just do that also. So I'm just going to put it back. It's always a little tough with the demo just because of timing and obviously temperature is important with this. Typically you can just basically leave the ganache sitting in a bowl and then have it, just let it sit, cool down a little bit and have it ready to go afterwards. So I'm just going to pipe a few right now. So the little chocolate discs, again, give me a base to be able to dip. So I'm just going to hold the piping bag above here. I don't move the bag, I just squeeze and let the ganache run out. So I don't end up with something that looks like kisses. Pipe, pull away. Pipe, pull away. Now we can, some of these I'm going to do like little sandwiches with the other piece of chocolate as well. So what I can do is just pull this piece up and then I can just drop this on top. Let these set like this and then I can dip them. So it just gives me a different look. These I will finish also a little differently and not in the cocoa. This mat that I use, also AUI does sell it. So what I do with the mat is I put acetate down on the table. I make the table slightly damp first, put the acetate down, put the mat on top, and then spread it very, very thinly with the chocolate. And then before it's set, just lift the mat up, and that way you get these little discs like this. Okay, I do have some prepped though to show you about dipping. And then also, we're going to then also dip the other ones in chocolate. So I have here melted couverture, which is in temper, of course. Just pull it into the middle. Okay. Make sure it's nice and mixed through. Okay. So then I have some items prepared, of course, just because of timing. Dipping forks, this is my favorite. It will bend slightly, so it's a little flexible. And I can also make sure the prongs are also always make sure they're nicely lined up and spread out correctly before you use it. But I like this one because of the angle of it. It works well with you kind of angle of your hands, so you're not awkwardly reaching over yourself. And these are some I did earlier. So you see now the ganache is nicely set up, and then these I can dip. Also have my piped ones. And these are going to go into the cocoa. So my piped ones are still a little bit on the soft side, but they're firm enough to do what we're doing with them today. So the magic of TV, right? So, thank you. So if I'm just, we'll do both. We'll dip and we'll do the cocoa. So my cocoa powder is also here. It's a nice reddish cocoa. And it's so nice because you can get all different tones, fat contents, Dutch process, non-Dutch process cocoa. So just by having 3 different cocoa powders, I can also identify which truffle is which as well, which lets my customers know, and also the people that work for me at the store as well. Just get some water. So I did test the couverture before we started, so I do know it's in temper. Obviously, it has to be in temper so it sets correctly. You have a smooth shine to it, and then when you eat it, you have the mouthfeel that you also want as well. So we're going to dip these first, and then I'm going to show you also how to do this little embossed pattern on it, which right now is dark. I'm going to put a little gold luster on this as well afterwards so you can see it. So the palais d'or means piece of gold. So if we do the gold luster, then I can brush it on the surface. So what I'm going to do, take this one, I drop it into the chocolate. I'm going to cover the whole thing and I catch it. When I catch it, it's kind of in the middle of my fork. But what I do is I go up and down on the surface of the chocolate. That way it's sucking away all the excess so I don't get feet, or I avoid them as much as possible. Clean it over the edge and then I just drop this down. So I drop it in the chocolate, cover it, catch it in the middle. I'm going up and down on the surface of the chocolate. So it's sucking away all the extra. I just dropped it. No worries. Come back again. Over the edge. And drop it down. So middle of the fork. It's this just the movement, the suction is taking away all the excess chocolate. I can, whoops, never mind, that's one to eat afterwards. Sorry about that. We always need samples, right? When our customers come in, we always give them lots of samples because a lot of them have never had the quality of chocolate and the different percentages, or even know that, chocolate is from all growing regions around the equator of the world. And at the store, we have Dominican Republic, we have Ecuador, we have Madagascar, Venezuela, and Ghana. So we have a lot of different origins. So up and down, up and down, up and down, off the edge. And what I should see after like 4 or 5, I should see the first ones beginning to set. Of course, before I do anything, we always do tests. So we make sure that the couverture is in temper, because there's nothing worse than starting all your work and getting halfway through and realizing that your chocolate is not setting correctly. If it's not in temper, you're going to get like gray, streaky look to it. It's going to take a long time to set, and that's because the cocoa butter in it. But tempering is a whole thing for itself. If you're doing a finished product, you have to have the couverture correctly tempered. If you are using the couverture as an ingredient, then, in a mousse or in a sauce or a dessert, then you don't, but you do if it's a finished item. So these are just dipped. They're beginning to set. I'm going to pop them in the cooler for a couple of minutes. Just because I want to show you also how I'm going to finish them as well. So, and in the meantime, we will do the ones in the cocoa as well. So I put these to one side right now. Okay, so when we drop them in the cocoa, we want that really nice texture as well from the cocoa powder. So let's make sure I have enough of the cocoa powder in here to be able to drop them into. So I'm going to just lift these up, drop them in upside down, tap away the excess chocolate, bring it over the edge, and just let them sit just for a moment. But you see how I really do need that chocolate base, because otherwise my ganache would just be sticking to my fork and I would not be able to get it off. Just cover it. Now I'll do like maybe 4, and then I'll just start moving them. Okay, I'm going to use a different fork for this. So now I'm just going to kind of push them. And this will give me those nice ridges in the chocolate. Now this will, again, they need to set for a moment before I lift them out. Once I lift them out and the chocolate is set around them, then I will take off just with a brush, just dust off the excess chocolate. So when my customers aren't eating a mouthful of cocoa powder, which I'm sure when you've all had tiramisu that you've all done, right? But I really personally really like the look of these, and it really is all about the chocolate. just because it's such a pure finish. So let me explain also a little bit how we regularly make our ganache for our truffles, bonbons, and fillings here. So what I typically do, if I'm not using this method with the RoboCoupe, I will take my scale my chocolate in one bowl, and in the other I will have my cream, my butter. Some recipes have invert sugar in them. Some have glucose, basically retaining the moisture, and also helping with shelf life with those products as well. And what we do is we bring the cream, butter, and if there's any infusions, flavors to a boil. We pour half of it over the chocolate, let it sit for a moment, and then we stir it from the center, kind of create a vortex, and then keep stirring out the edge. Once the chocolate's melted as much as it's going to, then I add the rest of the liquid in thirds, just slowly. It's taking the temperature down slowly. It's not kind of shocking the chocolate at all. And you will also end up with a really nice emulsified ganache doing that. So bring the liquids to a boil. I also use fruit purees, not just heavy cream. Half of it over the couverture, then the rest in thirds, and then stir it till it's all emulsified. Let it reach about 90, and then you can use the immersion blender and just finish off emulsifying it with the immersion blender. Okay, so let's see. So these now lift up. I think the more texture you have, the better that they, the cooler that they actually look. But I need to just give them a minute to sit. We'll do that in a second. And in between time, I can pull the other ones and just show you how I'm going to finish those as well. Typically, our production is a couple of day process. We get the molds ready, we clean them, we polish them, we do the coloring, do the cavities, and then the ganache fillings, fill them. And then on the second day, we come back and we cap them, chill them again, and then we turn them out. So most of what we do is it's like a 2-day process with our production. But you can get a lot done in 2 days. So and the nice thing about the chocolate products, at least you have a decent shelf life, which is what I love about it too. You can plan ahead. All right, so now take these. So have a little stamp. It's actually one of Feltman's. It's a really heavy thin steel, and it's got a little coated pod embedded into it. So what I need to do is I need to chill this and then make the embossing pattern on the So I'm going to just pipe. Spray this with cold spray. Really cold. So I can pipe the dots. I can do a couple. Just stay cold quite a while, and then just press down and pull up. Do about 4 or 5. This is still very cold. Cold spray works actually really well. And it chills for quite a while. So now to kind of bring out the pattern, I'm going to use a little bit of luster dust. So I always just tap, brush out, and then it just emphasizes the patterning. And you could also have these little stamps made for you with your own logo on them. You could just type little chocolate discs, emboss them, and then just use them on desserts and that kind of thing as well. See if these are, might need a little bit more time to chill with that. Okay, so let's see if we can pull out. Now we've got these. So to say when we have the ones in the box, you can see the 3 different colored cocoa powders here. The one we did was this one in the middle. So now I can just kind of dust off the excess. These are our single origin Grand Cru truffles. I actually started doing these for Father's Day because I thought for the guys, and they pair like really well with whiskies and bourbons and that kind of thing. So you could actually suggest pairings. We do actually have 4 different chocolate origins as well, where we have them made into like little tablets. They're round discs basically. And then we suggest different coffee origins. We work with a coffee company locally that did actually a coffee and chocolate tasting for Valentine's Day, which is really cool. It was really nice experimenting and seeing the flavors of the coffee, how they brought out the chocolate flavors and vice versa. There's also wine pairing and also spirit pairings with that also. So, but I just, I think these are really cool with all the little textures as well. They look very, very organic kind of looking here. And then of course, cocoa powder, of course, just goes everywhere. And then we have our little same thing. We just added the top piece to it, and then we use that little chilled embossing tool to give it a little texture there on the surface as well. So same recipe. If you're using different percentages of the couverture, the recipe will need to be adapted because it is very, very balanced. But I think it's an interesting way. You don't compromise the quality of what you're doing at all, or the texture or the mouthfeel, but you do have a fresh ganache which has an increased shelf life because of the sugars that are added into it, which controls that water activity. So slightly different way of making a ganache, either slab ganache or a pipe ganache. When I'm doing the filling ganaches, my proportion of liquids to chocolate is higher because the shell is containing the ganache filling, and so it doesn't kind of need to hold its own when it's piped. So when we're typically doing the softer ganaches, those are the ones that go into shells. Slab ganaches, pipe ganaches will have a higher chocolate percentage, plus maybe a little bit of cocoa butter as well. to make sure that it's set correctly. Like I said, one more time, you don't use the RoboCoon, you want to go to traditional methods. Then I'm going to bring your liquids to a boil, pour half of it over the chocolate and add the rest in thirds, and you'll get also a really, really nice emulsified ganache as well. So little different methods, and I hope that it's informative. It's a shame that you can't be here to try everything, but I will be taking some of these to the convention. So please stop by and see me at the icebreaker with the culinary team. And thank you very much for tuning in today. And I don't know, Jackie's any questions?
Oh, Chef, we have so many questions. We won't be able to get to them all, but if you'd like to take a few, I'd be more than happy.
Yes, I think we have a few more minutes, right?
Yes, we do. Wonderful. Well, first of all, I wish I was there too. It looks so delicious. You're just watching it through the screen. Okay, so we'll pull just a couple of these questions. One of the chefs tuning in is wondering if there's differences in flavor of the cocoa or the chocolate grown in different countries, and what do you feel is the best quality?
Definitely there's a difference. I mean, like I said, we have chocolate that comes from Venezuela. So we have a few different percentages in that one, a 49, an 88, a 65. And that one tends to have a lot of red fruit notes to it and has a little bit of a spicy finish. If I taste the curaçao that comes from Ecuador, it's got a lot of tannins and almost like a licorice black tea notes to it. The one from Madagascar is a 68% that I have, and that's slightly smoky, and then it has very citrusy notes. So if you are working with high quality curaçaos from good sources, you're definitely going to be able to tell the differences. And then you select as to what using. The chocolate that I use for production is from Ghana. And it is a nice, balanced chocolate. It has slight fruitiness to it. My milk chocolate is a 43% milk from Ghana, so it's not overly sweet. And that is my production chocolate. And then for my single origin bars, we have probably 10 different ones at the store. And that's not even all of them that Belkin produces. I could go Costa Rica, Ghana, but my goal has been getting my customers to try different ones. So I think if you're working with single origin, high quality chocolate, it's good to go through and, taste, and then you match up your fillings with what you think will be the best flavor profile, whether it's an infusion or a fruit. With the one from Madagascar, the 68%, because it's got really nice citrusy notes, that goes really, really well if I'm using, say, mandarin or something as well, because it just highlights those flavors. So yes, I explain to my customers a little bit like coffee or wine. So the grown region influences the flavor profile of the finished product.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you very much for the explanation. We'll take another one here, which is, do you have any suggestions for any liquids or unique liquids to create vegan ganaches?
Obviously, the milks that we can get now, coconut milk is a good one, or coconut puree, and fruit purees. You can buy fruit purees. The ones I use currently are from Pontier from France, and they have purees that are 100% fruit. Also purees that have 10% sugar. If you want 100% fruit, they're available. But just to eliminate the dairy, basically. And then dark chocolate's not a problem because dark chocolate is vegan. But Felton makes a very nice vegan milk and a vegan white. The dairy substitute for that is like a rice syrup powder. So you still have a creaminess and richness to it. And I think there's some other ingredients in there as well, just so you get that mouthfeel. But dark chocolate, use fruit purees, or use your now there's all these different milks, like oat milk and coconut and that kind of thing. But the main thing is working out that you get a good viscosity. But I like coconut puree with, say, white chocolate, for example, or the purees work as well. So hopefully that's answered your question. But Felton does have really, really good vegan milk and white. And if you're worried about sugar, they also have very high quality milk white and dark sugar-free chocolates also.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. Very helpful. And you mentioned white chocolate, which just leads into one of the next questions was the chef or student who's tuning in is having a little bit of trouble when they're making white chocolate ganache and tempering white chocolate. Any tips or advice when handling or using white chocolate?
Yeah, I mean, don't overwarm it. Also make sure that, because it's got a higher sugar content, it's a little tricky. So typically when we work with dark chocolate, when it's in temper, we work with it about 90 or 91 degrees. White, you should be at a lower temperature, probably about 86 when you're working with it. When you're not using it, make sure it's sealed really well in airtight bags because it's got a lot of surface area, so it can absorb moisture very quickly. And then when chocolate absorbs moisture or gets moisture in it, it thickens it. So just really gentle melting, high quality chocolate. Use a high quality chocolate if you can get one, and gentle processing. That's all. And I think also when you're making the ganaches, don't like shock it all at once. Don't add all the cream, all that at one time. If you go slowly, you're creating a gradual emulsification, which is not like shocking the heck out of your chocolate to begin with. So you don't get like the cocoa butters and things like that separating.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so let's see. One of the other questions, someone's wondering about the warming basin that you have your melted chocolate in. They hadn't seen that piece of equipment before, so they didn't know if you might be able to explain how that works.
So it's called an effector. If you go to some of the chocolate companies, the one I have is from a company called Moldart, which is, I think it's Belgium. So what it does basically, it doesn't temper the chocolate, but you can set the temperature very exactly. So typically what I do if I leave it overnight and I turn it up to probably about 95, 98 degrees, so the chocolate can all melt out. When I come in the morning, I turn it down to 90, and then I either take some out and I'll table it, so it's in temper, put it back in, or I'll add coins to it, which are in temper, so I'm seeding it. But basically what it's doing is keeping it at the exact temperature that we need for working. I have a couple of sizes. There's one that's a little bit smaller. So the smaller one you're seeing here, the larger one is here. I keep milk in one and dark in the other. But Waring is another company that makes them, and they have very small ones as well. So if it's just for small amounts or for dipping, but basically what you're doing is you're keeping the melted couverture at the correct temperature in these, and they're called effectors.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, Chef, we have so many more questions, but I think it just speaks to the great interest that there is in this topic and the appreciation for you being here. However, we've come up on the end of our time. And so I wanted to know if you had any final thoughts or tips or anything you'd like to leave with the chefs and culinary students who are tuning in or watching the recording.
Well, I know that things like tempering, it can seem so mysterious, and a lot of people make it that way. It's practice. That's what it is. It's realizing, okay, it's not working. The beauty of it is that you can melt things back down again. You can reuse them, remelt it, retemper. So, just persevere, read, find out why things are happening, and then you'll be able to solve the problems. And I think just, the food industry is gone through a lot of struggles. It's hard to find labor, but I think it's just you be passionate about what you do and about your food, and that will always shine and always come through. And stay the course. It would be nice to see more female chefs in the business who stay in the business for a longer period. I feel like a dinosaur. But stay the course and enjoy what you do. And if you're not enjoying a particular job, then go find another one that you do enjoy. But the industry is so diverse that there's always a lot that can be done. And stay with it. And I look forward to seeing you in person at an event or at the convention in New Orleans.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. We appreciate a huge virtual round of applause as we thank Chef Susan Notter. Thank you. And this was such an informative presentation, and we appreciate you taking the time to share your chocolate tips and techniques with the ACF community today. And it was also delicious. So we all wish we were there with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you all soon at ACF National Convention, July 16th through the 19th. It's not too late to register, and you don't want to miss all the amazing education and networking opportunities that we have planned, to watch the competitions. We'd love to see you all there. Well, also mark your calendars if you'd like to join us at one of the upcoming one-day ACF Masterclass Summits to be held across the country. We have designed specialized programming for culinary educators, for those interested in advanced culinary, advanced nutrition, and we also have the Advanced Pastry Summit, where you can actually also meet Chef Susan Notter in person and attend her demonstration on sugar work this October at Johnson & Wales University in Charlotte. So you can visit acfchefs.org and click on the events tab to sign up for any of these upcoming programs. So on behalf of the ACF National Office, thank you again to our guest chef, Susan Notter, for this delicious opportunity. And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day, and we'll see you all in New Orleans. Thank you.
Thank you.